my company built a business in the events world, a software business basically,
Okay.
and we had built a platform that was we called it a food profile system, so it collected dietary restrictions of guests before they came to events, and then we consolidated and aggregated a report to be attached to the BEO for the operators. And we were looking at, so that was kind of the MVP of what do we build as a larger platform. We were looking at ways to build out a more useful, kind of easier event management system to keep everybody on the same page,
Yeah.
and out of the inbox hell, which it looked like everything was trapped in. And then, of course, the world ended, and nobody really needed to manage in-person events anymore. So we were trying to figure out what else can we do,
Yeah.
and we just kind of started throwing out this idea of virtual event catering, and people got really interested in it and kind of asking us. So we threw it out as like this idea. We didn't know how we were going to do it. We just said to a couple of people, "Hey, what if we started coordinating a standardized catered experience for everybody on your Zoom call?" And
Yeah.
they said, "Well, that sounds awesome. How are you going to do that?" And we said,
Yeah.
"Oh, we don't really know, but if you'll buy it, we'll figure it out." So we sold a few pilots on it really fast,
Okay.
and it was a matter of figuring out how to make it happen. And it's really just it's a logistical thing. It's not really a software thing. It's just pulling together the different pieces between delivery and packaging, and coordinating between the caterer and the clients, and getting addresses in time, and then
Yeah.
making sure that food gets delivered on time. And it's gone really well. Honestly, we're five. Well, I should say four pilots in. The fifth one is the event actually happens next weekend. Uh,
Awesome.
we've out of those five pilots, one of them, a couple of things went wrong, and we learned a whole lot. That was probably the best one we did, just because it had enough fails in it for us to learn.
Okay.
And the others all went super smoothly. It was really kind of um, I think surprising for us that more things did not go wrong because there's so many moving pieces.
Right. Right.
Uh,
You think, oh, just order lunch. No, it's a
it's
bit
not
more than that.
simple.
And I'm so glad that we're having this conversation exactly because some of the conversations I'm having, for instance, with associations who are able and can put on a slam dunk in-person event, and they normally have all those logistics taken care of. They've done it over and over again, so they know how to do it. And now in this virtual world, what does that look like? And this exactly, and I think I told Sean this, which is why he made the connection, is having those sort of experiences. And so what's going to keep somebody engaged in a virtual event where you're just staring at your computer versus, for instance, I'm calling it the boardroom broadcast experience, where it's kind of that in between where the organizer may or may not be able to have their in-person event, but it's not their position to say whether or not their audience, they may be able to create some sort of social distancing safe environment for their employees or for their audience where you get 10, 15 people in a boardroom to experience it together, and they're
Mhm.
broadcasting it, and that's a different ticket tier. And in that ticket tier, you're experiencing, and that was exactly I have this pitch deck that they can put and present to their board of directors or to these whoever is the decision maker, and they love the concept. And then the alternative to really simplify it is you just bundle in, let's say, a $50, $100, $500 gift card is
Mhm.
the easiest way to kind of give that experience, but then all the logistics is on their end. So
Right.
having a service exactly like this, and this is what I was talking to Sean about, was uh hey, we can do it if your board likes it, then we can figure out how to make it happen. But it really is a logistical thing, and I'm so happy, and that's how the universe and your network just aligns, right? As to it's gotta be out there. It's a logistical thing. The food is there, the need is there. So now we just need that service provider to make it happen. And that may be slightly different than your typical event planner or your typical
Mhm.
catering, because you have the capacity to go with whatever restaurant or whatever they want. You can bring, it doesn't necessarily just have to be food either.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
this is,
I'm excited for that.
it's a delivery, right? So you can put, if you've got a swag kit, if you've got a gift bag, you got any kind of branded items, exactly.
Yep, yep,
You put whatever you want in this kind of stuff.
yeah,
Uh, Food is just the vehicle, and it makes it kind of worthwhile.
yeah.
Whereas without it, it's like, oh, am I really going to pay the $10 shipping to send out like a branded pen and a mug?
Right.
I don't know about that, but
No.
oh, now there's food involved.
There's
It's
food,
worth.
yeah. And coffee, for instance, the other, uh, you can get a Keurig for, on Amazon, or get those K cups and then have those coffee sleeves. And you can
Mhm.
have a kit and it's a coffee or brunch or whatever it is. And that's the other thing too at these in-person conferences. Normally you're paying for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and coffee in between all the sessions, where this, you could have really a nice brunch perhaps, because a virtual event may not be 9 o'clock until 6 o'clock.
Right.
You may have kind of that 10 until 2, maybe it's a few day event, whatever it may be, that you can have just a very nice deliverable that bridges that gap between
Mhm.
breakfast and lunch and coffee, and it just becomes this nice cohesive nice package that you can bundle, you price out so that you know what to offer that as just a value add. And yeah, there are some logistics, but that's either a matter of your team needs to do it or just have it done for you, or the
Mhm.
alternative, great, just send a gift card and be
Yep.
done with it.
Yep.
I mean, that those are your options. So where are you kind of now with the project? You have the pilots, which are going well. Are they wrapping up? Are you what's kind of the next step after the pilots? I'm
Yeah,
excited
good
for
question.
this.
So we're using the month of August as like our transitional phase from pilot to kind of a more cohesive launch. So we learned through the pilots, of course, the larger operational components that we have to get into place and make sure they're running smoothly.
Yeah.
So we're doing a couple of smaller events in August, but we're actually trying not to do so much, and then we're trying to fill up our calendar in the fall as a wider launch where we're expanding out of the Philly region. We're working with more caterers. We've got national delivery in place now, trying to automate a lot of the processes and so forth so that we can scale it up without blowing up our staffing needs. Uh,
Yeah.
but we're actually, it's interesting. We're starting to get a lot of interest from caterers, just asking if they can leverage our logistical components
Yeah. That makes
rather than
sense.
everything else. And
Yeah.
that's nice for us because it helps us just kind of get back to being software rather than a service agency.
Exactly. It becomes a service, even though the software is kind of the operational
Right.
component to make it happen. And those are the parts that your end user, they don't care about. They don't care how it's built. They don't care how it happens. They just want their lunch.
But this
um,
one for lunch, exactly.
so would caterers be great introductions for you along the way, around certain maybe areas that you're trying to target? Are you focusing in certain cities after Philadelphia? Because those are definitely a big part of my network that I've built relationships with as well.
So yes to caterers, and to answer the question about geography, we're letting the events that we take on drive the geography,
Okay.
unless it doesn't quite make sense to us to do this as a regional rollout, just because one event might have people in 6 different regions,
That's, for
and how do you
instance,
be inclusive for that?
yeah, that's
So,
what's happening with this current event I'm working on. The event normally is in Florida, but it targets higher education, which is all around the world. But they really focus primarily in the US, but they could be any state university, any college, any community college. And so, especially now that the event may not be in Florida specifically, that doesn't mean that their viewers could be all over the country.
mm, yeah.
And to figure that piece out, because again, it's a lot different than just calling up Panera Bread. You may not have Panera Bread in all of these different areas. So you have to find what makes sense and kind of give that price point too. Like, are you eating at, a 5-star restaurant experience, or are you having sandwiches delivered from Wawa?
Yep. Yep.
So, oh my gosh, I love it. So that makes sense. And I'm glad to hear you say that. I definitely see some synergies too in, one, the need. Two, I've already kind of pitched the concept to several people in that boardroom broadcast, and
Mhm.
it's definitely wanted. And so I would love to see how maybe I could better streamline introductions to you that way, as far as the associations or organizers, because I can tell you I would love to be a part of that relationship, but
Mhm.
I do not want to get involved with the logistics and I'm sure it's a lot that I appreciate the time that it's taken to kind of figure those pieces out. And I'd much rather kind of invite you into that circle of being a service provider for that. So
Sure.
I see two different avenues. And again, why Sean is a great connector.
Yeah, totally. It makes sense. So we're thinking. It's not quite solidified yet, but we're thinking about ways to build out kind of a network of planners,
Yeah.
planners and organizers that are early adopters for our services, we can funnel leads to them, they can funnel leads to us, and we just become that value add for you're still trying to provide food and beverage for your events. Here's the way it can still happen.
Yeah.
We're working with this company that does it, and our goal is to get to the point where it's a software platform where you can just go on the website and sign up for what you need,
Yeah.
leverage the logistical components. We take care of that piece. You get what you need, and it just kind of flows through. We're not there yet, so we're hoping to build out this network of 5 or 6 planners kind of using that service as a manual process,
Okay.
so we can figure out how to improve it and automate it.
Yeah.
uh,
Are you
so
creating some
that
sort
makes a
of
lot.
a journey or case study around this? Because this is definitely something that, without giving all your secrets of how it's done, for instance, I'm working on a case study that organizers are interested in seeing what sponsors and exhibitors want, and
Mhm.
this becomes a sponsorship asset.
Yep.
Where, because the in-person events, you're not getting your typical 10 by 10 or demo opportunity in the same way that you do in an in-person, or to sponsor the reception with opening remarks. This becomes the themed reception opportunity,
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
And so I would love to either feature you or appropriately, because I know that you're kind of in the pilot phase, but maybe just kind of reiterate to those organizers and to the sponsors and exhibitors to say, hey, would this be an area that you would actually be open to explore? Because a lot of them too, they don't know that they really want to invest into virtual events or sponsors, because it's the same old, everybody's zoomed out. But something like this, to put their name on the packaging that comes in, that I think would be really intriguing. It becomes that personal touch point that basically this company is sponsoring that lunch, just as they would be the lunch sponsor or the networking sponsor. And it gives that different spin. So I would definitely invite you, and maybe we can see how I can better integrate and introduce that way along my case study. And I didn't know if you were also kind of gathering those things that are working and not working, and maybe if you want some feedback too, I'd be more than happy to see how we can collaborate on that.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. So the case we've got to produce case studies. Everybody wants case studies.
Yeah.
We've got 2 of our pilots. They've told me that we can do a case study on it. We just have to develop the material.
Okay.
The more we can do, the better. So far, what I've done is just kind of consolidate we ask people to post on social media when they get the meals.
Yeah.
A lot of good vibes come out of that. So we've just kind of pulled together some of that stuff and we threw it into our sample proposal so people can see what it looks like.
Oh,
It
yeah.
needs to be a full, yeah, and I can send you that material so you can see it.
Is that something that I'm at least able to pitch with your permission and your credit, so
Oh
that
yeah,
I can better? I'll put it this way: me putting the pitch deck together, I literally went onto Google and highlighted Panera and
yep.
K cups, and it looks okay. But I would love to. This is why I use strategic partnerships, because if I'm using actual decks and actual, this can happen, and this is your person to actually make it happen,
Hmm.
then you become part of that pitch deck, that
Yep.
vision board.
Any material you need to
That'd be great.
highlight it for people, we can produce it. And if we don't have it yet,
Yeah.
uh, if it, generally it's going to make sense if you're somebody who wants it. It's going to make sense that others are going to want it too, so we can
Yeah.
produce it.
Yeah, because I'm this person that I'm the creative and I have the ideas and I've seen it work, but they need to sign off on it. But I'm the one to help paint that picture for them and to help actually get it into a tactical,
Yep.
possibility. You can wish everything that you want to make your event amazing, but unless there's an actual solution out there, I'm the connector to make it happen. Yeah.
So Michelle, I don't just to make sure we're on a good timeline here. I
Yes.
have at 2 o'clock, so I want to make
Yes.
sure we don't run over. But I do want to hear more about how you work with clients and kind of what your agency is like.
Yeah. So to turn the tables, my background being logistics and event planning. And then also I ran a business to business marketing division. Now it was for a mortgage company. And I bring this up because I work best for companies that have sales teams and marketing teams where a lot of times they have these outside sales reps. So lunch and learns, that's another component that would be amazing to bring you into. So you have lunch and learns, you have trade shows, you have conferences, this is how these businesses and these sales teams are integrating with their marketing teams to leverage their pipeline, to leverage their networking. And so the gap in the industry that I fill is not necessarily the event management to put on the event and what time does coffee come out, and all the logistics and liability and the contracts of putting on an event is very important, but that's very saturated. There's so many event planners, there's so many event solutions out there. We can promote your event, we can get butts and seats, we can build out the event itself, yet they are so concerned about the customer journey of the ticket holder and the experience of their attendee, which is very important, all the logistics. Yet I feel the gap to support and retain and make sure that your sponsors and exhibitors have a great customer experience, that they see ROI at their event, and that goes beyond the logistics. And
Hmm.
so, for instance, I was looking at an exhibitor kit, 194 pages of logistics. That's just their logistics of the contracts to sign off, of all the liabilities and where to ship things and all the logistics, right? Somebody has to go through that. But take a step further and say, okay, I know where I need to ship things, or on a virtual event, I know I need to log in, or I know that I need my equipment logistically, but how are you actually going to have a campaign? And I like to kind of paint a picture 90 days before, week of, and 60 days after. In addition to whatever else your marketing campaign looks like, whether you use digital ads, whether you have a marketing team, you have all these different moving campaigns, but when it comes to event campaigns, that's my sweet spot. And filling the need of, whether it be just the project management and being that liaison. If you have a sales team and they go to 10 events a year, their marketing team is already on overload, or they're so focused on running Facebook ads or webinars, that just to have my team specifically to make sure all 10 of your events are streamlined, that there's a cohesive message, that the before, during, and after, who are we outreaching to, that we actually have appointments set, so that handshake at the event is actually accelerating your customer journey and optimizing that opportunity, because you only have so much time in an event. And virtually, what's happening, like I mentioned, these associations or these organizers, they want to hear from, well, what's it going to take now for these teams to actually spend and invest into my event, rather than reallocating those funds, let's say $5,000 into a Facebook ad.
Right.
You may have, and that's the thing is, great, if you approach someone and say, hey, do you want to sponsor my event? Their immediate thought right now is, we don't have an event budget, or we're on a travel ban. Oh, it's a virtual event. I'm zoomed out, right? Like these objectives. But approaching it more of, great, where are you reallocating and what's working for you? We're using webinars, we're on podcasts, we are doing demos. Great, we can do that, and we can craft that actually into our virtual event campaign. How can we make that happen? That now they're a little more, hey, we still have this marketing budget. We still have $100,000 that we need to spend somewhere, or the CFO is not going to sign back off on it.
Right.
So where can we reallocate that and support the virtual and hybrid world? And this is why I'm so excited, because I've been kind of tossing the concept out there, and it's well received. It's just how does that happen? And so is that painting kind of the picture of my relationships with the
Yeah.
organizers? And I mentioned on my website, and really I partner with organizers. So if I'm brought on, I am not putting on their event, I'm not their event management, but I can definitely guide them into the virtual hybrid space. And then more so, and I'm doing a case study like I mentioned, we should definitely connect on LinkedIn if we haven't yet, where there's organizers and there's this gap of communication between they want to hear from these businesses, and the businesses have these frustrations and needs and expectations, but they don't have a way to communicate that back to the organizer. And so I'm kind of that middle of the table to say, hey, let me put this case study together. This is what the organizers need, this is what the exhibitors and sponsors need, and here are the expectations, and here's how we can make it success. So
Makes sense. So in a sentence, it's kind of like you ensure the value follow through for the event, right? If
absolutely, yeah.
somebody says this is going to raise your sales by 5%, you're going to figure out how to make that happen and then ensure that it does
Mm-hmm.
happen.
Yeah, one sentence, I ensure you get the most bang for your buck for your event campaigns, just
Makes sense.
like you would Facebook ads or anything else. So,
Cool.
so yeah,
So I need what people keep asking me for is the case study, and I know what they're really asking me for is the case study that shows some kind of tangible value. And we've been brainstorming ways to prove that, and it sounds like you may be kind of ahead of the game on how that goes. So partnering on a case study towards that end would be really, really beneficial, I think, for both of us.
I would love to have a segment of this case study specifically, and we can figure out semantics on another call, on another conversation. But there can be absolutely a component that I would love to feature you, and you know, see how we can integrate that a little bit better to communicate to both ends of the table.
Perfect.